Evening. Welcome to my channel. As you see, the video I'm going to be talking about is very dark. First off, how many people do you think goes missing an average each year in national parks? Roughly around about 90% of cases have been recovered, while average people who go missing each year in national parks is 606,000. 606,000 missing people each year. The National Story NPS has reported 34 missing people and 3 deaths from January 2018 to January 2023. Additionally, the Grand Canyon National Park has at least 56 reported missing persons since 2018, 6 fatalities overall. Of all the number of missing persons in national parks not qualified as border contact, basically just like this right here. There's people going missing in these national parks and everything for a long time. And right now, this is followed this 56th, 58th anniversary of LBL Land Between the Lakes, on that tragic day when the people got killed. Family 4 got killed by a mystery creature. Even though they found canine DNA. What does canine DNA means? In other words, a lycanthrope or a werewolf would kill these people, because it shows the father having 5 claw marks like a human hand. His son was second to go. He was killed. The mom was the third person to go. She was killed in the bathroom. The bathroom door, everything was destroyed, like something was ripped through it and everything. And they found the little door, and the next day, shrunk up in a tree, like animal kill. They tried to say, oh, the bear, but no, bear would not slice or bear open a door like a human will. There has been legends of LBL, Land Between the Lakes, ever since 1800, or longer than that. The government don't want us to know what's going on. They understand about these creatures, so buckle up with me. Get your silver bullets out. Get your crucifix and everything. And let's dive into this LBL mission together, shall we? Between Lake and Barrio is 1,300 miles. Put that in mind.
And days that we could possibly calculate, we have been working feverishly and extensively on the next part of our Beast of LBL trilogy. We are actually working on the third part as well, but that will come down the pike at a later date. This has truly been a labor of love for us, and it's just a general passion for us making this video. Throughout this video, you also have audio commentary, and you'll see on-site footage of the scenes where they actually happened. So without further ado, I hope you truly enjoy this video on the Beast of LBL. Titus Macius Plautus, the ancient Roman playwright, once wrote, "Where there is sheep, the wolves have never very far away. Since time immemorial, wolves have always been feared and hated, and not always unjustly, but many times they have been made to answer for the sins of men, because throughout history, many men who committed the blackest of base crimes against their fellow man made a scapegoat of the mysterious forest dweller, and if they didn't outright blame wolves as a whole, many of them claimed to have either been possessed with the spirit of a wolf, or transformed into a wolf and carried out their infamous crimes. Two such cases involved individuals who were tried as werewolves and were either imprisoned or executed. Peter Stube, whom we have reported on in the past, was a German farmer who was tried for werewolfery and executed on October 31st, 1589, after confessing to practicing black magic and making a pact with the devil to receive a mystical belt that allowed him to shapeshift. But he also confessed to killing and cannibalizing 18 people. The other notable case was that of Jean Grenier, a 14-year-old French boy who claimed to be able to change at will into a ravening wolf, and further claimed that he often stalked and ate a number of children while in the form of a wolf. Jean was promptly arrested, but because of his tender age, he was imprisoned in a monastery instead of executed. Jean died just a few years later in captivity. Cases like these in the Middle Ages led to a kind of werewolf hysteria, and people deeply believed in the possibility that a man could transform into a werewolf and spend much of his time in that shape. Others believed in beings called the Cynocephali, which was a race of dog-headed men, and many notable historians wrote of these fantastic individuals as though they were real. Still others believed in a tribe of beings called Wolvers from the Celtic land. The creatures are said to have a human-esque shape, but have the heads of wolves, human-like hands with razor-sharp claws, and the backward bent legs of a canine, and it is alleged that they could go forth on either 2 legs or 4. The Native Americans believe to this very day, in the very real sense, in skinwalkers, evil medicine men practicing dark shaman magic. The belief in werewolves, wolfmen, dogmen, and skinwalkers is alive and well today. And many people believe that one such creature is alive and well right here in modern-day America, and of all places, right in the heart of one of our national parks, or rather, one of our national recreation areas. The enigmatic perplexity of Land Between the Lakes and its mysterious best is an ever-deepening conundrum that many would say borders on conspiracy theory or outright fantasy. And I would almost agree if the stories were not so widespread and the witnesses so sure and truthful about what they have seen, experienced, and encountered, it would be easy to write it all off if the locations where the events allegedly took place didn't exist. But they do. And many of those who lay claim to being first-hand witnesses all seem to go to the very same places when showing others where they lived through what is to them seemed like scenes straight out of a horror movie. Lore and legends for this area go all the way back to the 1700s when French trappers and hunters were plying their trades across the region that is today known as Kentucky. These brave and adventure-hardened pathfinders declared and insisted that the forests and lands were inhabited by creatures that some refer to as loups-garoux, or wolfmen, terrifying beasts that appeared to be half-caste amalgamations of men and wolves. The beasts were said to howl their blood-curdling dark songs into the night, and leave mangled and mutilated animals and livestock scattered about, and to cause general mayhem by frightening local residents. Whatever the truth may be, many people today still fear the beasts, which are still reportedly seen to this day. Witnesses have attested that they have seen the mysterious monsters in their forest abodes. One even claims he saw what appeared to be a female crossing the roadway with a litter of pups. Others still claim to have been assailed, stalked, and even chased by these fearsome monstrosities along the main thoroughfares, along waterways while camping, and even while visiting the infamous Hotel California. Land Between the Lakes has no shortages of creature sightings, and whatever the truth may be, the place is mysterious at best, and certain elements of the local lore and legends have a striking similitude to the 1977 horror masterpiece book that spawned the immortal classic movie, and in my humble opinion, best werewolf movie of all time, The Howling. The Howling tells the story of a young couple who moves to a rural community called Drago, where the townsfolk and locals share and protect a sinister secret. That secret being that the town has a werewolf that lives there and is responsible for a series of murders and disappearances that go back decades. The couple eventually becomes entangled in a mystery and ultimately finds themselves beset in a nightmare as they realize that the town doesn't have one werewolf, rather a whole multitude, as it is revealed that the entire town shares the curse of the werewolf, and all are responsible for the carnage. I say that there are similarities, not because I believe that the nearby towns are filled to bursting with supernatural monsters, but because the towns seem to share some sort of dark secret, or maybe a mass psychosis. I've interviewed individuals who have warned me to keep my business private when I'm there researching the legend, especially if I'm staying at the local hotels. The individuals interviewed have laid claim that more than a few have seemingly just vanished from hotels in the region. Is it true? I can't hazard a guess, but that is what we have been told as truth. Other supposed truths that we have been told is that a part of the neighboring communities share the belief that one of the local families in the area is actually a family that has the ability to transform into werewolves and have roamed these woodlands for decades after the curse was brought to these lands by a European settler who settled there in the 1800s. The supposed family of afflicted lycanthropes still roam the area and now use the LBL National Recreation Area as their private hunting grounds. We do not hold to this belief, but some do, and they do not speak of it above a whisper, if they speak of it at all. Others still maintain that the ferocious creature is a skinwalker, or the ghost of a skinwalker who was once a Shawnee medicine man that dabbled heavily into the dark arts and became so evil that he was tracked down and killed by the members of his own tribe. Again, we do not share this belief either. We currently share the opinion that the beast is a flesh and blood cryptid creature known as a dogman. However, we are not so arrogant to say that what we believe is the final word on the subject, as there are no experts in this field, and we certainly are not. And for what it is worth, we will follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it leads in a direction that challenges our own long-held paradigms, and we will follow any lead to its conclusion, no matter how fantastical it may be. And we will not hoard information, but rather share it freely, unless it may cause others harm. Having said all that, let's take a look at the barbarous beast of LBL and the claims made about it. The beast of LBL rose to the highest echelons of infamy when reports surfaced that claimed that the beast is responsible for the horrific mutilation and murder of a family of 4 some years ago, and has been linked, at least through the rumor mill, and at least one now deceased eyewitness, to at least 7 and possibly 9 deaths or mysterious disappearances in the land between the lakes area. However, today, we will focus our attention on the most prevailing, undying accusation of them all, the nefarious RV massacre. Before getting underway, I have to admit that to this day, I know of no one who has been able to provide one shred of documented proof, newspaper, or news report to validate the incident actually took place. However, many people over the years have come forth claiming either to have been on location while the bodies in the crime scene were being processed, or had family or friends on location, or had heard the story firsthand from those directly involved in the alleged investigation. Having said that, this is the story as has been reported over the years, and after the many years that I have been hearing the tale, it has changed very little. However, we question a few of the facts. We don't doubt them, but we believe that a couple could have been embellished a bit over time, but we are not dogmatic over that belief. With no further ado, the allegation. The story is told that in the late winter or early spring of 1982, most likely in the late February or early March time frame, a rather well-to-do family from parts unknown decided to pay a visit to Land Between the Lakes and spend a few days enjoying the park and avoiding the crowds before tourist season set in for the season.
Arkansas or Arizona.
They arrived at the park around 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the extreme northern end of the park, there in Land Between the Lakes, where they chose to hunker down for the evening in an isolated but very modern and swanky RV park that came complete with lights, bathhouses, and water, all the conveniences that a traveling upscale family could want. The park was largely or completely empty except for the family in question, and I would suspect that it was completely devoid of other persons. Otherwise, the calamitous events that were about to take place would have no doubt alerted multiple spectators. As previously stated, the family pulled in around 3 o'clock and backed into one of the slips set aside for RV parking. And from what we have been able to gather, the family chose the last slip on the furthest east side of the park, on the side nearest the ravine. Being as this was at a time of year before daylight savings time, the father went to work prepping the site for the evening because darkness would fall soon and the RV would need to be leveled. And although their recreational vehicle was one of the nicer available in 1982, it did not come with self-levelers, and it needed to be done manually. The family consisted of 4 individuals, as the story goes: a father, a mother, a son somewhere around 1 to 12 years old, and a 9-year-old daughter. Some iterations of the story portray the daughter as much younger, and I cannot argue her age one way or the other, as I was not there. Working against the clock, Dad and the boy began to level the front of the RV, and they were deeply engrossed in their tasks when the wholesale slaughter is said to have begun. Witnesses that claim insight for law enforcement on the scene saw that it was now around 4 o'clock, and it was starting to become dusky dark. Dad and son were, as said a moment ago, were leveling the front when the creature that has become known as the Beast of LBL, a suspected Type 4 dogman, came up presumably from down by the lake and through the neighboring hollow, and made its way around the left side of the vehicle on the driver's side and encountered the terrified duo. We can only speculate as to how the 2 victims might have reacted to the sight of the unnatural apparition standing right before them, like something out of a horror movie. I would imagine that they were almost paralyzed with fear as the werewolf-looking beast commenced to mangle and mutilate them. The story states that Dad was the first to go, dispatched in a most ghastly way. Every version of the account that I have heard ends with Dad either being decapitated or having his head twisted around completely around backwards. The majority of versions state that the head was removed, as well as one or both of the arms. It is interesting that the dad's head was allegedly removed, and dogmen are said to primarily remove the heads of their prey, at least according to some researchers in the field. The creature, having mutilated Dad, now sets its awful sights on the son, who has fled for the door on the passenger side on the RV, seeking sanctuary from the certain death that even now was pursuing him. If the stories are true, the young man made it all the way to the door before the monster caught up to him and rent him to literal shreds, ending his young life.
He didn't make it to the door.
At this point, Mom is said to have become aware of what is happening and sees her son tattered and torn like a rag doll by a nightmarish monster that is not even supposed to exist according to science. Mom is understandably traumatized and screaming uncontrollably as she watches her son's life extinguished before her very eyes. Unfortunately for her, the bestial abomination's attentions resolutely drawn to her. The creature is said to have torn the door from the vehicle's hinges and gained entrance into the inside of the trailer, where Mom and daughter have assumedly been preparing things for the evening. All accounts that have been given by supposed witnesses and police officers who are said to have worked the crime scene are all in agreement on this point, that Mom, for whatever reason, was savaged so badly that many of the crime scene hardened officers had to go outside and vomit. Mom is said to have been horribly slaughtered, and the entirety of the trailer's inner cabin looked like something worse than a horror movie could have possibly concocted. One prevailing theory on why the beast noticed the family and the attacks happened rests on the belief that both the man and his wife were wearing heavy amounts of cologne and perfume, and I'm not sure how a person would know that unless it had come out of some kind of incident report. The mother is believed to have been wearing something similar in composition to Estee Lauder, and Dad is said to have been wearing something akin to Canoe, both of which in 1982 might have contained actual musk. In 1982, it would not have been out of the ordinary for a man or woman to have slathered themselves in copious amounts of cologne or perfume, as it was sort of a prevailing custom of the day. It is theorized by alleged investigators and researchers that during the day, as the sun shines, the air temperature is heated, thus allowing the warmer air to rise. But as the sun began to set, the air would have cooled rather rapidly, allowing the colder air to sink onto the forest floor and create a sort of draft that would have drawn the air down through the hollers and down to the river's edge, carrying the irritating musky scents of the heavily applied cologne and perfumes, it garnering the attentions of the LBL beast, luring it up to where the hapless family was parked. After Mom died, it is theorized that the daughter had taken refuge in the back room, where she had locked herself in hopes of escaping those slavering jaws of death. Sadly, the enraged beast, if the tale is to be believed, tore the door away and gained entrance to the child's only safe haven. That is said to be how the course of events played themselves out. But that is not the end of the story. We have to flash forward a small space of time, and no one knows how much time passed before the bodies were discovered, but it is assumed to be no more than a few hours. When a couple of hikers drove into the RV park and saw in their headlights the mutilated body of the dad lying in the road, the startled couple could clearly see that the man was dead, and they had no intentions of getting out of the car. So as fast as they could, they turned the car around and sped away to the neighboring town of Grand Rivers, where they alerted the police. And it is unknown how long it took to call law enforcement, as in 1982, 911 may not have been available. The 911 emergency number was created and put into use in 1968, but not all areas had it until much later. Tennessee, for instance, didn't start using the 911 emergency line until 1989. I would expect that Kentucky was probably in a similar time frame to Tennessee. Law enforcement, now alerted to the catastrophe, arrive on the scene to find a display of carnage unequal to even the most horrific spectacle that Hollywood has to offer. The local officers have never witnessed anything of this magnitude. Some are visibly shaken, as others violently gag and throw up. They begin to work the crime scene and find that Dad has been mangled by something with massive claws, and his arm has been pulled off, or so the story goes. However, a clue is found in the still clenched fist, and that clue is a handful of thick, coarse fur, which is collected and sent to a crime lab for analysis. Law enforcement finds the son and the mother also dead, and then to their horror, they find clothing that belongs to a young girl who is nowhere to be found, meaning that there could possibly be a survivor and potential witness who may be able to shed a little light on what took place and what precipitated the events that left the RV park littered with bodies and body parts. Knowing that this possibly still living child may still be out there and in need of help, the officers and park rangers on the scene spread out and began to desperately search the area for any sign of the young girl. Two of the first officers on the scene veered off into the woods on the right-hand side and started to walk down the hill when one of the officers noticed a splotch of red on his partner and inquired if he'd been injured, to which he replied, no. As the two nerve-rattled peace officers stood there, the one with the red splotch began to feel his hat being pelted with a steady drip, drip, drip of something like red rain falling upon said hat. Both officers shine their flashlights up into the tree by which they are standing, and their eyes fall upon a grisly sight that will haunt them both for the rest of their lives and cause their hair to become prematurely gray if the story is true. Up in the crook, or the Y of the tree, is the mauled and partially devoured body of the missing girl. Now at this point in the story, we can say that we are contacted and asked to come to Louisville, Kentucky, and meet with a gentleman who, when we interviewed him, claimed to have had a relative in law enforcement who was alleged to have been at the crime scene working it, and he confirmed to us the story up to this point. Other individuals have reported to us that representatives from the government arrived on the scene and took over the investigation, dismissing the local law enforcement. The first two officers on the scene are reported to have left the crime scene and stopped at a local convenience store and relayed the terrifying course of events to a friend working at the store. Her full account can be found in the very insightful film work of Barton Unley called Hunt the Dog Man from Grindel Films. If you've not seen this film, I would encourage you to get and watch it, for this tale and others taking place in LBL. I would also recommend The Beast of Land Between the Lakes by Jody Cook and the North American Dogman Project. Before I trail off too far, I will say that the results in the hair sample found on the father was alleged to have come back as unknown, but were most closely related to Canis lupus, or wolf. Some of the tales circulating around about this encounter say that once the government became involved in the case, they sealed off the entire